Lots of jobs getting filled. I think 6 out of 10. But one of them that isn't is the Cleveland Browns job, and it seems like nobody wants it. Maybe one of their current coaches is going to get it. We'll talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of The Barbershop, and he is Kevin Oestreicher, who is always with me here on a Tuesday. What we're going to do is use the clips from our local experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on all around the National Football League. We do that every day here on the Locked On NFL Network, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, of course, the number one sports podcast network. And we're glad to have you here making us your first listen. It is your team every day. So we'll just tell you exactly what we're going to get into today. At the end of the show, they're blaming Sean McVay for the loss in the conference finals of the NFC. We'll discuss that. Baltimore's new and old regime, there's nobody. I mean, I even had a clip loaded up until I realized, why you got a clip of Kevin? He's on the show. So Kevin Oestreicher is going to be here to talk about Jesse Minter, that new hire. But first, we're going to stay right there in the AFC North and, of course, talk about the saga that is the Cleveland Browns. I don't know what it is about the state of Ohio with the Browns and the Bengals, man. We are always talking and speaking of dysfunction. And it feels like that's what they have now. You think that they fired Kevin Stefanski and they would have new life. Well, Kevin Stefanski got a whole new job as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, a team that's in a better situation than Cleveland, and Cleveland is still looking for a head coach. Kevin Oestreicher, why does no one want this job? Is it because of the discourse of the Pro Bowl quarterback, Shedeur Sanders? Is it the owners? What is it that's making these guys take themselves, including Grant Yudinsky from the Jaguars, to say, nope, I don't want nothing to do with it? Why is Cleveland having such a hard time?
Well, some of the stuff that has reportedly come out is the fact that the Browns are pushing guys that they want Schwartz as the DC if they get hired. And that's something that some teams can do. Cleveland is a team that I don't think can do that. And, you know, we obviously saw that in Atlanta with Stefanski, who got hired from Cleveland to Atlanta. They wanted Jeff Ulbrich to be the D coordinator there. And Stefanski was okay with that. And that's what it is. You know, Atlanta has a lot of young talent, some potential there. And Stefanski was like, cool, you know, I get to work with Bijan and Kyle Pitts if he comes back, and Drake London and Michael Penix. Sure, that's fine. But Cleveland is a team that is, you know, and it always feels like you're setting me up to go in on these other AFC North, my AFC North brethren.
No, they shouldn't seem like that. That's exactly what I'm doing. When you talk about it, seems like I do it on purpose.
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here, and I'll do it. But Cleveland has been, you know, a team that just hasn't been able to get it right. And so when you're a young coordinator candidate who has options, not just as a head coach, maybe as an O coordinator somewhere in much more stable situations, it's literally the short answer to what could be a very long one for me is just look at Mike McDaniel's situation. He said that he would rather take a better offensive coordinator spot in a better situation than a bad head coaching job. Because if you flame out in 2 years in Cleveland because it doesn't work, you know, over the roster, or the, you know, Andrew Berry doesn't make the right moves or whatnot, you're back to square one, and your reputation takes a hit because you're the head man there. So that's me the big thing.
Now you failed twice, and you're not Mike McCarthy with the Super Bowl ring to get a third chance.
Yeah,
Mike McCarthy, by the way, is the luckiest dude on earth. He's coached the Packers, the Cowboys, and the Steelers. Ain't that something? That's amazing trifecta. I don't know if you can get much better than that in terms of the, you know, when you're talking about blue bloods in the National Football League. All right, so I want to get the opinion of Spencer German. This is a little bit extended clip. It's the only one you're going to see in segment one. Normally we do 2 segments, but because I really want to get to the bottom of this, because I actually will tack on something too about Jim Schwartz after we see the clip, because I think he's a top 7, top 8 defensive coordinator, but I'll tell you why it's not automatically a thing that teams would just say, okay, we'll keep him. It just doesn't happen that way. Here's Spencer German from Locked On Browns.
A pretty important update in the Browns head coaching surge from Saturday night into Sunday. As the team has confirmed, they did have an interview on Saturday with former Chargers coach, current Commanders running backs coach, and run game coordinator Anthony Lynn. This is another candidate that gets kind of added to the pool here, and it does help fulfill half of the Rooney Rule, which is a big part of this, because we know they have the interview with Nate Scheelhaase tomorrow, which would make them fully compliant with the Rooney Rule, and then they can make their decision on who they want to hire. We'll talk about that again in a second. I do want to say, though, that this interview must have been done with some reasoning behind it, whether it was that they envisioned Anthony Lynn as somebody who could be on the staff in some capacity, depending on who they chose, or if they considered him a legitimate candidate for this job, because Andrew Berry's not the kind of executive that's going to just go out and do a sham interview for what it's worth. But beyond that, the Rooney Rule part of this and being compliant with the Rooney Rule as of Monday when they talked to Nate Scheelhaase sets the stage for the Browns to make their final decision and decide which direction they're going. It feels like the winds are kind of blowing in the direction of Grant Yudinsky or Nate Scheelhaase. If it's Yudinsky, they can announce that pretty quickly after interviewing Nate Scheelhaase. If it's Scheelhaase, though, that announcement isn't coming for a couple more weeks. So just keep that in mind, that they can make a hire immediately after Monday's conversation with Nate Scheelhaase. But if it is Nate Scheelhaase, it might be something that we're waiting a couple more weeks until after the Super Bowl, depending on what happens with the Rams in the NFC Championship game today, before the next Browns head coach is officially in office. Now, Jim Schwartz is part of this equation too. There was a report over the weekend that we at least know Nate Scheelhaase would consider keeping Jim Schwartz on staff as the defensive coordinator. I think that's some important news in terms of the direction that this organization is looking, because we know they value Jim Schwartz. I do think in the best case scenario for them is hiring somebody who keeps Jim Schwartz on staff. We'll see how this all plays out, but we should have a decision, or we should at least have an understanding of what the decision is, whether they're waiting for Nate Scheelhaase if the Rams win, or if they're just riding with somebody else like Grant Yudinsky or Jim Schwartz straight up. We will have that answer coming up this next week.
All right, so let me give you an update. Grant Yudinsky, the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive coordinator, the team that I cover, has removed himself from consideration for the Cleveland Browns head coaching job and has worked on getting a pay bump from the Jaguars, but he is still a candidate for the Buffalo Bills job. It's probably not trending his way, but I think the Jaguars have handled that the way that they should. I heard they're doing the same thing with Anthony Campanile, give him a pay bump just in case he does not get hired by a team. And according to Mary Kay Cabot, who covers Cleveland and others in that area, it is trending towards Jim Schwartz being the head coach. And maybe by the time that this show airs, he will be the head coach. I don't have a problem with it. The only thing I have a problem with, man, is I think we look at stats and coaches and their reputations. And once again, we say, why wouldn't you want Jim Schwartz? It's not that these new coordinators don't want Jim Schwartz. What they want is someone that they already have in mind, that they've had in mind since they probably started getting a job. Some dude that they were probably at camp somewhere 10 years ago talking about philosophy, and they were telling each other when they were 25 years old, if we ever get in this position, this is what we're going to do. If we have you come get me or I'll come get you. It's about being complimentary and in being in line. And then if you keep the coach from the previous staff, maybe half the team listens to that guy and doesn't pay any attention to you. I think it's about having fresh ideas in the building, Kevin.
Yes, and I will break news to you on this show. The Buffalo Bills just hired Joe Brady as their next head coach.
They went through all of that, and they promoted Joe Brady to be.
He is not heading to Buffalo. If he wants a job, looks like it would have had to be Cleveland. But yeah, a lot of people are just pulling out of this Cleveland search. So it's a really weird situation right now there. It feels like it's going to be Schwartz or, maybe even a guy like a Todd Monken for this job. But again, like whoever's going to come in, ownership looks like they're going to push those guys in the direction of, hey, you need to keep this guy on the staff. And, the reality is like guys want to build their own staff. So at the end of the day, like you're already an organization that is struggling and has struggled for years. You're making these demands. I mean, that's not a good combination, and it's going to push a lot of people away, and it has.
And giving people weird tests, I understand too. The thing is, those people probably need to come in with a test for you to show your competence, since the Cleveland hasn't been able to be competent for a very, very long time. All right, we'll get to Joe Brady. We'll get to some other coaches including the Baltimore Ravens that Kevin covers, why they have a new coach, new approach, but it's the same old thing. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Man, if you need tickets, man, there's only one place you need to be going, and that is Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time became the go-to app for scoring tickets without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with you, the fans. Pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and you'll have tickets right in your face, locked in within minutes. Love seeing the all-in price up front when I was on the app, because there's no surprise fees at checkout, because that absolutely gets on our nerves. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing solid prices, and you can pick the seats, and you can save money. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON as your code for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. And today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on all the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. I know y'all want to cry, but this is the big game. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, just bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, on official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My man Oestreicher, there he is. He's right here with me, man. I think that's where he is, right there. He had to pop Kevin up with that new haircut, man. He was jealous of you, man. They didn't want to see you shining on here.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Looking all smooth with your haircut, man. I didn't cut it, by the way. He's in Baltimore. I'm in Jacksonville, but still, it is what it is. Let me play this clip. I got to play it before we get to the Buffalo Bills. Before we get to the Baltimore Ravens, because this was what I had up next, and you just broke news. Check this out.
This needs to be all about Josh Allen. If this team is going to do it, it's going to be about Josh Allen. Not Josh Allen and how he is supplemented with a run game and a defense that is opportunistic. No, it's about maximizing Josh Allen's output, which I think is the biggest failure the Bills have had over the last couple of years.
Ain't that appropriate? Because that's exactly what they did. And it's something I predicted. The second they let their their head coach go, Sean McDermott, I said, it's got to be Joe Brady. The dude he won an MVP last year. He's in the top 3 of the voting this year. There are a lot of people that believe he is the best quarterback in the league. A lot of people think he gets a lot of passes too, but that's for a whole nother day to argue with. But Joe Marino, who does a great job at Locked On Bills, he called it. He said this has to be about Josh Allen. It brings up this question too. Was the firing of Sean McDermott all about Josh Allen? And did Josh Allen have anything to do with it? Because I think Josh Allen definitely had some say in Joe Brady getting this job.
I would definitely agree that Josh Allen had some say in this, and especially after some of the reports that we've heard. This has been a weird week and some change for the Buffalo Bills. And, I think that Joe Brady is somebody that has been in that building and he's developed a relationship with Josh Allen. And now, the way that they didn't And honestly, it doesn't make sense in some ways, but it makes sense in a lot of ways because they didn't move on from Brandon Beane. It wasn't a clean sweep. And so when you look at that and you say, all right, well, who's aligned with our organization right now? Who is it? Is it going to be an outside guy? And they're going to try, they're bringing in some fresh ideas. Maybe that guy, maybe Brandon Beane, who has been known to not work great at points with certain people. Apparently, is that something that's going to work? Or is it going to be an inside guy who they already know, already have a relationship with, already is in the building, already knows Josh Allen, already knows Brandon Beane? Feels like after that whole press conference and how this thing went down, the more you looked at it, the more it made sense that maybe they just want to keep it status quo, but they didn't keep it status quo with the McDermott firing. This is the only way they could have done that, and they ended up making that decision.
Somebody up there knows something that we all don't know, because when you watch the Bills, it looks like they're hurting on defense from a personnel standpoint, not from a coaching standpoint. I saw them personally against Jaguars have a very good defensive plan in that wild card round. So something that we all must not be knowing. So Kevin, tell us what we don't know about Baltimore, because they've made a very, very interesting hire as their pass game coordinator. Mike Minter, I believe, from Notre Dame. Jesse Minter, yeah. Jesse Minter. Jesse Minter is the head coach, right? Yeah. Didn't they just hire a pass game coordinator?
Mike Mickens is
Mike Mickens, that's his name. And he is known as, even though I screwed his name up, he is known as a developer of players, and he's known as a dude that is probably a future head coach himself. What do you think about Baltimore sticking with the brand? Like Pittsburgh didn't stick with the brand, but Baltimore did. It's like Duke basketball. They're always going to hire a Duke disciple, or North Carolina basketball. They're going to hire somebody with some connection going back to Dean Smith. Baltimore kind of did the same thing here by keeping this thing tucked in-house by hiring one of John Harbaugh's disciples, if you will, and Jesse Minter. Too much of the same thing with just a new face, or is it just what you think they should have done?
I think it's a totally fine hire for me. It's in-house without being in-house, because Minter hasn't been in-house for a decent while now. But you mentioned it. I mean, worked under John Harbaugh. Essentially, this is what the Ravens fans wanted. And, I wanted it. A lot of people who watch this team, cover this team, and are fans of this team wanted it. Was Mike McDonald being the head coach a couple of years ago. Like, that was the thing in Baltimore. And he leaves for Seattle. The Ravens made the AFC Championship game. Wasn't a path probably for them to do that. I thought that they should, but I didn't expect them to. And then McDonald goes to Seattle, and we see him in the Super Bowl right now. So that's like all right, that's the one that got away. And then Jesse Minter comes along, pretty similar path to Mike McDonald, was in Baltimore, went to Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, then went back to the NFL, ended up doing some good things in his NFL stint. Now he's back in Baltimore. And I think that he's one of the guys that, in my opinion, he definitely was one of the hottest head coaching names in this cycle. Baltimore report, according to multiple reports, cut their OC head coach search short. Now they're on their OC search right now to get Minter in the building, because they knew that with the turnarounds they had seen from both the Michigan defense and the Chargers defense, with the way that his players, especially just in the farewell post, like his current Charger players, former guys who would play with him on the Ravens, seems like a guy that he connects well with a lot of these guys. So I like this hire a lot. I know my top option was Kubiak for them, but Minter was a very close second. Like, I'm not complaining whatsoever. Like, Kubiak and Lamar together, especially with what we've been seeing from that Seattle offense, man, that would have been pretty crazy. But now the attention does turn to what's going on with the offensive coordinator spot. And Joe Brady was an option for that for Baltimore, named to watch according to reports. So he's now out of that running.
Yep. It just seems to me that there's a little bit of a trend of we got rid of the wrong cargo, like Tampa, with Liam Cohen, and then when Ben Johnson leaves Detroit, and then now Jesse Minter going back to Baltimore, it's like people are looking for a familiar thing. Even the Chiefs are bringing back Eric Bieniemy. We'll discuss that and more, and whether Sean McVay was to blame for the LA Rams not winning the conference championship. We'll get to that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked in to every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch now, it's the perfect time to close it out strong. Prize Picks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. Prize Picks is incredibly easy to get started. Pick two or more players and choose more or less on their projections. Make watching games way more engaging, especially during the playoffs and the big game. Great way to keep playing fantasy football even after season-long leagues are long gone and finished. The favorite feature is the early payouts, which lets you cash out if a player gets off to a very, very hot start. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It is good to be right.
Like the old
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ETHOS.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
All right, we're moving the groove with my man Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens here with me on Tuesday, like he always is. The Everydayer Club is alive and kicking, man. If you're a person that listens to the show every day, you are an everydayer. If you want to take it to another level, make sure you click down in the description of the show that you love the most or multiple shows and click on it, the Everydayer Club, for a small fee. You can have access to our app store where you get beautiful shirts like the one that I'm wearing today if you're watching, and you also get ad-free versions of our audio show. All right, let's get to it, man. We were just talking about coaches that want something old. They want the old thing back. One of them is Kansas City because they haven't been playing like them their old self. Listen to Locked On Chiefs talk about something old that they're bringing back to reinstill some discipline on their offense.
It's official. The Kansas City Chiefs have hired Eric Bieniemy as their offensive coordinator. We've been talking about this for the past couple of days, but it seems to be official at this point. Tom Pelissero of NFL Network is reporting the Chiefs have offered Eric Bieniemy the offensive coordinator position. This is a huge get and something that was really surprising to me because I did not think that they would go this direction. I figured that they would be looking at maybe Mike Kafka or some other person that had some experience with Andy Reid. I did not think that they would go back to Eric Bieniemy, but they are going back and hiring him as their offensive coordinator. It's going to be interesting. They have made some other coaching moves around on the offense, and you have to wonder if things are not done on that side of the ball, and they're going to continue making some other changes in that. We will let you know as soon as we hear more. Keep it tuned to Locked On Chiefs, and we will have you covered.
All right, man, are the Chiefs trying to kick the tires and make sure that old car still runs well, or do you think this will help their offense?
I have no idea. I have no idea what this is going to do. I mean, it feels like, again, it just was weird with Matt Nagy and kind of how that whole thing ended. I mean, he was positioning himself for a head coach opportunity, I guess, and that really didn't. I mean, it was probably Tennessee or bust for him. But I mean, look, Bieniemy had a lot of good years in Kansas City. There was also, there were some questions about him that I remember about certain things, which I thought were just like, all right. But he also, I mean, the success is there. Like we've seen it. Now, the big question is going to be, with Patrick Mahomes dealing with the injury, Travis Kelce potentially retiring, like what is that offense even going to look like next year? Because there are so many moving parts and moving pieces. But I mean, at the very worst, I would say it's just kind of like a lateral move from Matt Nagy to him. And I think it honestly can be better. Like I honestly expect it to be a little bit better.
Yeah, Andy Reid said he'll be a little more direct with the
Yeah.
players. And
Yeah.
that is something that he is absolutely known for, which is we call it direct. I don't call it direct when my wife talks to me that way, but that's just kind of what it is, right? I mean, you're going to listen, you're going to get down or lay down. That's just it. It does not matter. A lot of people are blaming, especially people in LA, you wouldn't believe this, they're blaming the guy that people think is the best coach in the NFL, Sean McVay, on the loss the other day. A lot of people, other guys from Locked On Rams, I want you to hear this, and then we'll come back and discuss it.
You lost this game in the secondary, you lost this game on special teams, and you lost this game because of Sean McVay. And you just got to be honest with it. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. This is not to say that I want Sean McVay replaced or that he's not one of the best coaches in the NFL, but let's just call a spade here. The divisional round game against the Bears, Sean McVay had clock mismanagement issues. And then in this one, Sean McVay had clock mismanagement issues. Like, it's unacceptable. It truly 100% is. If we're going to celebrate the great things that Sean McVay does, we have to also highlight the things that I think have held this team back.
I think Sean McVay is a great coach. I think Sean McVay knew he had those two wide receivers and a Hall of Fame quarterback, and I know some people will argue about that. And I just think he has this undying belief that, they'll get us out of it. They'll get us out of it. They'll get us. And he coaches loose. And I think you want to do that. I think he got a little too loose the other day, though, and I think he was dependent and leaning too hard on Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and eventually Devontae Adams.
Yeah, look, nobody is, nobody's completely. There's not criticism for people here in the NFL that sometimes is warranted, sometimes is not. Like there's always going to be that for people, whether how good you are, how many championships you have. Like sometimes criticism is warranted. And I think for Sean McVay, like there's criticism that's deserved here. And again, like Seattle's a heck of a team. They orchestrated a great playoff run up to that point, but the goal is not to get to the NFC Championship game and say, yippee, look at us. The goal is to get to the Super Bowl and win Super Bowls. McVay has won a Super Bowl. Like, I'm not saying that he's this guy at all. All of a sudden, he's this terrible coach. Like you said, I think he's a good coach. But at the same time, it is about getting the best out of your guys, and the best means enough to win a football game. And while I think that, and especially in the big moments, right? That's the big thing to me. And for Sean McVay, they didn't get the job done, and there are multiple reasons for that. And I'm never one to pin everything on one coach, one player, one anything. But I do think as the head man, Sean McVay does deserve blame for some of what happened in this game because, it's a situation where it's your job, to have your guys ready and out there to play. And while, I said it for years with John Harbaugh, John Harbaugh's not the one calling plays. Well, Sean McVay is. Like, that's the thing. Sean McVay is the one calling plays. And so, whether it was the defensive stuff that was happening or, that's on him too, to get his guys ready to go. Chris Shula wasn't a great game for him in that defense, but where does it all go back to? It all goes back to the head coach. That's the life of being a head coach. And I think for as great as Sean McVay's been over the course of his career, it's definitely disappointing for Rams fans because I really thought that team had it. I thought Seattle did too. I think that's the Super Bowl we just watched, in my opinion. But right. I think that, McVay is somebody that while he's a great coach, he's not absolved from all criticism.
No, he's not absolved. And, but the criticism comes with the territory, just like you said. And it doesn't mean that he wouldn't do it all over again the exact same way. What it means is there's just sometimes in situations where who you are can help you and who you are you can go too far. It's like Dan Campbell constantly going for it. Sometimes it's good, but when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I just think he pushed it a little bit too far. And my man was right from Locked On Rams. They do need some help in the secondary. I like Kobe Durant Everybody else, though, don't know about him to the point where they need to improve in that area. And then Chris Shula ain't gonna get no more looks, man, until they show up on defense and do a little bit of a better job. So we'll see how that works. Y'all make sure y'all tap into Locked On Ravens all around the network. Locked On every team that you want. We're here every single day because it's your team every day. The #1 sports podcast in America. All of them are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. For my man Kevin Oestreicher here with me on the Tuesday, I'm Tony Wiggins, man. We don't take you for granted. We're glad that you joined us today, and we appreciate you. We will see you tomorrow. Tyler Rowland will be with you early in the morning. We're Locked On NFL in the morning.